Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Ryan Chats With podcast in our Celebrating Women series. It's been an awesome time getting to tell some incredible stories over these last couple of weeks, and I've got another incredible individual, Miss Carla Marie. She is co-host of the Morning Show podcast with Carla Marie and Anthony, an entrepreneur, on-air personality, content creator, empower of all sorts of people, including fellow small business owners and someone who's got the same cat-loving energy as me. Carla Marie, great to have you on the podcast.
Hi. Oh my God, that was like the best intro ever. Can I get a clip of that? I'm going to use it for everything.
100%. That's how you can open your podcast with Anthony, and then I can be like, oh, and also Anthony.
Yeah. He's used to
Exactly. Well, hey, congratulations on all of your success. You know, I feel like the last 2 or 3 years have been like the most epic roller coaster ride for you. Tell me a little bit about the story of the Morning Show podcast. How did that come to be? Because it's such a cool concept and one of those that's a genius move. Tell us how that, came about over the last, couple of weeks.
You're right. It is a very duh moment, but I would say it hasn't been a couple weeks. It's been almost a year. So obviously Anthony and I got let go from our morning show radio jobs in July of 2020. So fast forward to last March, we had been streaming on Twitch, which we're still doing. That is still very much, a huge thing in our lives, the Carla Anthony show on Twitch. But we were like, what are we going to do next? What else are we going to do? And we had been on a drive and we were listening to a bunch of those morning show podcasts, but they all have different names, whether it's the Daily Drive or the CNN 5 Things, all these different quick hit podcasts. And we were like, God, this is so boring. No offense to NPR and CNN, but it was just so boring. And I'm like, this is great. They're giving you great information in a short amount of time. That's an awesome way to start your day. But Anthony was like, we could do this so much better. And I was like, you're right. That was March 27th of last year. Fast forward to February 22nd of the following year, we actually launched it. Now there was a lot of red tape we had to go through, finishing our contract with our previous employer. We had other projects we were working on. We just kept putting it off. And then finally we were like, we need to start this. We need to do it now. And we did. And we just wanted to be able to give people a fun way to start their day, which is very much what we always did with morning radio, but something that was informative, right? We're not just laughing and joking and doing our Twitch stream, which is still entertaining and fun, but we wanted it to be a bit more structured and quick and give you everything you love from a radio morning show without all the stuff you hate, fake callers, a laugh track, 10 minutes of commercials, all of that. And so far, it's been working out.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen just so many great reviews and so many people talking about it on social media because of exactly what you're saying, that people want that chewable content, especially in the mornings or if they're on a commute. Or I know for me, I'll pull it up whenever I'm just getting up and getting ready for my day because I do a lot of work from home now. But that's the kind of thing people, and that's kind of the reason why TikTok and Instagram are becoming kind of the more powerful mediums on social, because of just hey, I want to get all of my stuff in 10 to 20 minutes time and not feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole. So it is that nice kind of organized thing. And, how do you guys see it kind of evolving, I guess, now moving forward into the future?
We want to add more, more segments is the best way to explain it. So we have 2 games that we play on there now that kind of alternate. So one day it's Cover Lovers, another day it's 2-second tunes, and they are music related. So we have some ideas of other games or other ways we can involve the listeners, because that is the one thing that is somewhat missing. What am I saying? Missing.
You've created a new word.
Missing when you compare it to morning radio is the interaction, and which is so much of what we as radio hosts love and feed off of. So yeah, we have that game, but we don't have that, hey, let's get a caller on to talk about their life or something that's going. So we will add a bit of that eventually. Maybe some former segments that we've done on the radio make their way back.
Ooh, snap.
But we do want to keep it short, right? So right now, under 20 minutes. Ideally, in the long term, maybe it's under 30 minutes. But we don't want to make it too long. We want to keep it to a commute schedule or a morning routine, time slot, whatever it is. But yeah, I think those are the next few steps.
Yeah, because you don't want the morning show podcast to evolve into the morning into lunchtime podcast. If it's like
No.
here's our 3 hour episode, especially because you guys are doing it every day. Like
Right.
that's
Also,
tiring.
no, no.
Yeah, that would be insane. But no, it's such a cool addition to what you guys have been doing, obviously on Twitch and what you'd previously done, obviously on air. And so getting into the Carla Marie story, I know that from a public perspective, from a public view, we see it as, you started your career on air. It evolved into doing your stuff in New York with, Elvis Duran, like all of those different pieces. But tell us kind of in a nutshell what the Carla Marie story was, is, and I guess is to come.
Yeah, right. Geez. Okay, so I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. Yes, I did land my first internship with Z100 New York, which I know is kind of unheard of to be able to say I started at the #1 radio station in the world, but I was an intern and I did a bunch of stuff behind the scenes working at Elvis Duran in the morning show. This was in a time in 2009, 2010 when there was no like real digital department and I
Mhm.
had a decent SLR camera, so they would ask me to come in on big artist interview days. They're like, "Hey, get the intern with a cool camera. Jay-Z's coming in." Like that was it was just the timing and being able to say yes to everything, like having a flexible schedule in college that just like it kept me coming back
Mhm.
constantly. And I interned there for 3 semesters and at that time they were like, "Hey, we have the show's growing. We're adding another position which is going to open up the phone op position. Do you want to interview for that?" And I did. And I got the job and I stayed there for 6 years. Now my time at Elvis's show, it's crazy because I got hired as the phone producer and left technically as the phone producer and lifestyle contributor. I was
Mhm.
still answering the phones very much into my time at Elvis Duran in the morning show up until my last day. And I did get more of an on-air role. I got my own segment called What's Trending. Elvis would bring me in all the time. And it was in my time there where Anthony was my coworker that we
Mhm.
were like, we should do a podcast. We want to know what it's like to be on air more.
Mhm.
So we started the My Day Friday podcast. That started getting picked up. No one really had a podcast at the time, so it wasn't even on the iHeart app yet.
Right. You guys were like kind of one of the originators of not only podcasts, but like that kind of major kind of iHeart network of podcasts for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah, like podcasts had been happening well before us, but the idea of people who work in radio doing a podcast was very new.
Yeah.
And we were just uploading the audio to elvisduran.com at the time. And then it was like, "Oh, we'll put you on the app." And we were like screaming. I'll never forget. So that happened. And then people within the company would listen to it and be like, "Oh, they actually kind of have something." So they offered us our own morning show in Seattle, Washington in 2016. We moved
Mhm.
here and I've been here ever since, but we did the Carla Marie and Anthony show in some form on different radio stations within iHeart in Seattle because they kept having format flips and changes and all that fun stuff. And we did that till 2020. In that time, I also launched my very own podcast called Side Hustlers, which
Mhm.
featured people who had a job outside of their day job and who were running their own small business aside from their 9 to 5. And then we got let go 2020 and then, all the other stuff that we talked about. I think
Yeah.
I got everything.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's so cool because you've basically over the course of, 10 plus years have experienced essentially the evolution of media in a
Yes.
nutshell. Like your internship, you were, phone opping, you were doing a lot of that, really the grind that I guess that is kind of spoken of. While also, like you said, being kind of that resource, hey, I've got the camera.
Yeah.
And I think we see that a lot in the industry of like, when you're starting out, especially nowadays, you really have a ton more power than like maybe an intern had 20 or 30 years ago, not even just in this industry, but just in general, because they know they're like, okay, this generation like knows their stuff.
If I hired an intern now who was 21, 22, like I was, they would probably run circles around me when it comes to tech and social media and all of that. So it is true. I mean, like we've grown up and we've been forced to kind of evolve within the industry,
Mhm.
but that is us actually actively learning where these 21, 22-year-olds, like this is just what they do. They know, they get it. And we were there. I was there at that point. But yeah, you're completely right. It is so different, in the industry now. Like you said, I've watched it evolve, but someone coming in now is like, oh, this is it. And then they're going
Mhm.
to watch it evolve the same way I did, and you will, and you are.
Yeah. And I think what's awesome too, especially about the more recent part of your journey, is you guys have ultimately, become almost like a case study in like, okay, this is how you make a challenging situation like, everything that happened in 2020 and just, media evolving from, exclusively terrestrial to, digital and terrestrial, and making something huge out of it. I see so many people that, are like, hey, I want to take a page out of the Carla Marie and Anthony playbook and do X, Y, and Z, which I imagine for you guys, it's like, what?
We're like, no, we're a hot mess. We really are. We forgot that we were supposed to file our taxes by March 15th as a business. And we were like, oh my God. So we had to file for an extension. So that happened. So granted, that's not front of the camera stuff.
The IRS is listening to this podcast right now.
That's great. But we put out obviously great content, right? The product is great, but behind the scenes, we're just like trying to figure it all out. And I think it's important for people to understand that we are Hot Mess Express behind the scenes and sometimes in front of the camera. But it's funny you mentioned that, Ryan, because we were at country radio seminar a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
And it was like the first big event that we had been to in more than 2 years at this point. The first radio event we had been to, especially since, not being in radio anymore.
Right.
And the amount of people that were coming up to us together or individually and saying things like, oh my God, you've given me hope, or you've made me
Wow.
realize I can leave my toxic radio job and do my own thing.
Yeah.
Or thanks to you guys, I started doing this. And we were like, so emotional, but also like, oh my God, don't put that pressure on me.
Yeah.
No, what if it fails? But it was really cool. And one thing we both always like to say is keep in mind, we are two people doing
Mhm.
this together, and not just one person going out on their own. Having a partner to take on half the work makes a world of difference. And
Mhm.
in our case now, a partner that lives with you. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, hey, I need this or I need that. You're not trying to get in touch with the person. We are very lucky in the situation that we are in. And I don't want anyone to be discouraged who is trying to do this solo
Mhm.
and be like, well, look what they did. Yeah, there's two of us doing this. And I think that's so important for
Mhm.
people to.
Yeah, and honestly too, like, do you think that really like authenticity has played a huge role in especially the more recent part of y'all's journey? Because like you were just saying, like, so many people are kind of like, wow, you guys have it all together and blah, 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 blah. And, you were kind of mentioning that like, yeah, well, on camera, you can kind of see in some cases that like, the whole Hot Mess Express thing that you were mentioning, that like, that's a huge piece of showing that, hey, like, look, we are still like, not only normal people, but a normal couple, a normal partnership,
Yeah.
so many pieces of that. Do you feel like authenticity kind of plays a huge role?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that is something we learned from being at Elvis's show.
Hmm.
Like the Elvis that was on the air is the Elvis that was behind the scenes. It was
Hmm.
the same thing. And people would always ask us like, "Oh, what is this person like? What is that person like?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "You know what they're like. You listen to the show."
Right.
So, we grew up in that media, that radio world of being yourself is the best character you can be.
Hmm.
And people will love you or hate you for it, but that's this industry. So be yourself, because then you never have to wake up every day being like, well, what am I going to do today? Or what am I going to be? Just be you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we've always done. The honesty, the just telling the truth, except when we lied about dating, but that we had.
That's an exception.
That's an exception. But telling the truth and taking parts of your real life and just being honest, that's
Mhm.
all people want.
Right.
So doing that has just been the easiest in most cases for us, and just has worked out the best for us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I imagine too, like it helped you guys get through some of the really crappy stuff that took
Yep.
place over the course of the last several years of your journey. And like you were just mentioning that you guys went to country radio seminar, and those individuals that were coming up to you and being like, thank you for giving me hope, to leave my, like you said, my toxic radio job, or, to be able to, create more content and that kind of stuff. So, we know that like you have been an inspiration to a lot of people, but who has inspired you over the years, especially in a time like 2020 where, or even before that? I mean, because
Yeah.
not only just like you guys losing your job, but your job kind of evolving so many times before that because of, things like format flips and stuff like that, where, you were kind of playing the adapting game quite a bit. So who kind of motivated and inspired you during a lot of those seasons?
So, wow. Oh my God. There's not one person. There's like a million. I feel like I'm accepting an award and I'm going to forget people. But so obviously, Elvis, I'm going to say that he always having him
Hmm.
in our corner to be like, hey, Elvis, is this normal? Or what's happening? Or what do I do? He was always great. Like the first time when we got taken off the air for one of the format flips, he called us immediately.
Yeah.
And he was like, I knew about this before you because I got a call saying, heads up, they're going to need you. Like, so
Oh,
that's how we always had him.
yeah.
So I'm very grateful that, he was always in our corner, but obviously people like Danielle Monero, who is like my best friend till this day, love always, always having her to go to for anything. But when we were going through a lot of the craziness, I'll be honest, Anthony and I leaned on each other because
Hmm.
there was really no one else I could go to and be like, hey, when they flipped your radio station and put you back on the air for 3 days and then said, never mind, what did you do? Because that never happened before. So we were going through so much of it together.
Hmm.
Um, but then when we got let go, we were clearly not the first people to ever get let go from radio.
Especially in
There
that era.
right? Teams before us. So many former radio people were reaching out and they would call us and we'd be on the phone with them for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And they'd be like, everything you're feeling right now is justified. One of them was Alex Gervasi, Alex on the mic on
Yeah.
Twitter. Anthony and I both cried talking to her. It was in the first few days of us being let go. And she was like, everything you're feeling is completely justified right now. As someone who got let go however many months ago, I'm telling you, you're going to be great. You're going to be better. And I was like, you know what? It's so true. I've watched her evolve over the last year or so on social media and seeing how much better her life is and the other things she's been able to do. And now we're at that point where someone gets let go and I'm like, hey, you're gonna be okay, I promise, and so on. So, she was great in that time, but also, Ryan, the radio fam, Marie, who is behind that account,
Yeah.
um, she stepped up so much to help us with, being on Twitch and getting us in touch with other people who stream on Twitch and other people in radio. And it's just the radio community is still very supportive, even if you're
Hmm.
not a part of the radio community.
Yeah.
And as a whole, I would say, that too has inspired me.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of people in there I know, but
Hmm.
it's not just one person. It's just been all of these different people throughout all of these different times have stepped up to inspire and to be there for me or both of us, Anthony and I, to lean on.
Yeah, and I think that's so true, especially like you were mentioning with just, even the people under like the Radio Fam umbrella, which, kind of
Right.
makes it sound like a faction, but it really isn't. That like there is this huge, gigantic support group of individuals that, will lift you up whenever there's situations like, people getting let go, or just generally they're great for inspiration.
Yeah.
That's like even just in recent time, I've, witnessed that of just being like, man, like if I would have known, years ago that I had these people like that can have my back and I can have their back, like, holy cow, like that would have been incredible.
So true. It is, and there were so many times in radio where it would have been great to have that group to lean on because I'd say, I was in radio for 9 years before I had that group because
Mhm.
I only really started getting involved in the last few months of us working in radio. So having the radio fam through transitions or moving across the country and having them connect with other people, that would have been great.
Mhm.
Didn't have it. So, but now people do, and that's important. And it's a great resource for anyone, whether you're in radio or just media in general. That's a great resource to tap into.
Yeah. Now, what were the biggest challenges for you guys whenever you had to make the shift? Or I shouldn't say had to, because you were, more so inspired to. Whenever you made the shift from on air to on air on Twitch, obviously beyond, the general kind of technical things of like, okay, we've shifted from being in a studio to we now are creating our own studio in our homes and all of those different pieces. What was really one of the bigger challenges of making that evolution over to a fully online Twitch type of platform?
So much of Twitch is another language. Like
Yes.
I'm still like, what is that word? And that is what's crazy. You've been in the media, you've been in this industry for this many years, then you move over to something which is also technically media, and I'm like, a bit. People need to subscribe, an emote. Like, what are all these things? And then you think like, oh, it's like Instagram Live. You just hit live and you turn it on. No, there's a whole separate program you need that will connect to Twitch. And we would spend, I mean, hours just Googling on how to make things work. Those first few months were just like, why is it not working? Why is it not working? I mean, we were trying to use headsets. I think one day Anthony went back and forth to Best Buy 4 times to return different headsets for us to try to get them to work. And guess what? We don't use headsets because we never even figured that out. There was so much. There was such a technical side of it where radio, you walk into a studio and if something's broken, hopefully your engineer fix it.
Mhm.
This was literally building a radio studio essentially from the ground up. We had a lot of equipment on our own from doing our podcast before we left radio. So we were very grateful, to have that. We didn't have to start buying all this equipment, which we eventually did because we wanted to evolve and,
Mhm.
where the show from now is completely different than even 2 months ago,
Mhm.
and what it looks like, and it's going to change. But I think the biggest thing was just this whole new world of doing this from home. And we had been on Twitch while at the radio station, but so much of that was like connected into our board, and
Yeah.
that was a technical thing in itself to get that going. But this was so different, having to connect the programs, and what my computer didn't work, but Anthony's did, and what lights do we need, and what other screen do we need right in front of me here, and what mic. Oh my God, it's constantly, it's so much. But we're in a good groove now. And it was fun trying to trial and error.
Yeah.
Trial, always.
Right. And it's constantly evolving too, because you're in that situation where you're like, okay, the second you start to realize that you have everything all together and it's all set up, then there's like a new thing that's been upgraded
Yeah.
to, Twitch, or there's a completely new platform, that springs up as well. And that's where I think I started kind of looking into it as well, and, trying to get the research, because, doing stuff like free for all and being like, okay, so bits, emotes, and subscribing. And okay, now I feel old. I'm 26 years old and I
Right.
feel like a senior citizen trying to figure out like what any of these things mean.
I
Uh,
actually made a downloadable packet. I'll send it to you.
Sweet.
I did a whole thing on four small businesses and why they need to be on Twitch. And I was like, I can't literally teach the Twitch lingo. It's going to take up this entire session. So I made like a downloadable little thing that people can use to understand what everything is. And I'm sure even since then, a few months ago, things have probably changed, but I'll send it to you because I'm very proud of it.
What's trending, and then with your Side Hustlers podcast and all of those different elements, what kind of sprouted that up to be able to do that and then continue on with, even with the morning show podcast, you have that as a segment on there, and what really has kind of like been the biggest inspiration, through that, whole entire thing? Because you're meeting a ton of small business owners, I imagine, and movers and shakers in that industry.
Yeah, if you want to make friends in a new city, start a podcast about small businesses. It's great. It makes such a difference. When I started What's Trending at Elvis's show, probably 2012, it was way different than it is now, but it started evolving into a cool product specifically, or service that people didn't know about. And I would start getting recommendations from listeners like, oh, this small business in my area ships everywhere. You should feature them. And then I would feature them on a show like Elvis that has 6 million listeners. And I get an email from that person like they were in tears because they sold more in that day than they had since their business started. And I was like, that's so cool. Like that, look at the power of this platform. And I just kept doing that and doing that and doing that. So by the time I moved to Seattle, I started meeting other small business owners because I had worked with our local NBC affiliate here, King 5, and they wanted to feature a What's Trending segment on their show with me doing, the same idea, products, etc. But they were like, we want to also include a small business. I was like, a local business makes total sense. So I started meeting them, and then I started realizing there's so many people that run small businesses, but also have or had a 9 to 5. This is so crazy. Like every side hustle. And that launched Side Hustlers podcast, which grew into something I could never imagine. Over 200 something small business owners, more than that, were featured. And I had, oh God, I don't know how many episodes. It was such a cool time to be able to give these people a platform to
Mhm.
tell their story and their why. And like you said, what inspired me, what kept me to keep doing that was every week I'd hear a story of someone talk about their passion, why they almost didn't do it, and then why they did it, and then why it worked out for them. And I was like, oh my God, people need to keep hearing this. By the time I did the last episode, I had featured people who started their small businesses because of earlier episodes.
Mhm.
And I was, what? Like you started your business because you heard an episode of my podcast? And those people to this day inspire me and have taught me so much about running a business because I wasn't a small business owner at that point. Now I am. And I
Mhm.
learned so much from them. The small business community is just full of incredible people, and they need as much love and as much support and as many platforms to scream their stories as they can get.
Yeah, and like I even noticed, I had started doing, some more live streams and Zoom interviews, like a lot of people had done, during the pandemic kind of lockdown season, where you kind of talk to a lot of small business owners that were trying to find new and inventive
Yeah.
ways to kind of really innovate during the pandemic, where everybody was, stuck at home and finding ways to help the community as well. And that was such a cool aspect, was just getting that
Mhm.
inspiration from the people that were honestly just doing the best good thing they could do at that moment in time. Did you kind of see that then with a lot of your efforts too?
Yeah, I started bringing on former people that I had on the podcast
Hmm.
and doing specific episodes with them that were how are they pivoting and what else are they doing for the community? Because the crazy thing was so many small business owners were completely changing their business to help their community
Hmm.
and also survive as a business, but they were in a lot of cases putting their community first. Everything from, oh, we're just going to start only making masks now. Like no one needs anything else we're doing. We're only going to do masks. Or this was so cool. A local cookie company here was like, well, instead of just selling my cookies, people are home doing nothing. Let me make cookie kits. And people started buying the cookie kits and doing them with their kids. And that was just, some of what I saw. I mean, there were so many different businesses doing the pivot and seeing how resilient they were during that time. It's been so inspiring to
Yeah.
know those.
Yeah, and like the cookie kits thing is so cool too, because it's like, especially during that time, everyone and their mother was trying to learn how to make bread. I'm glad I didn't try that, because it
Yeah,
was just like a whole thing.
it was a whole thing.
Like, considering the fact that I think like a month before the pandemic, I think I caught a toaster oven on fire trying to like, I think, oh yeah, I was trying to toast taco shells. I think that was the issue. And it literally, it caught fire and I threw it out in the yard. And I was like, okay. So when the
Well,
pandemic came around and everybody was like, we're making bread. I'm like, yep,
you were
no, I'm
starving.
not gonna. I was like, not going to go that route at all. Now, of course, last week over on your Instagram, you had posted, especially it was on International Women's Day, about the girl boss concept and kind of eliminating that kind of language. I want to hear, first of all, kind of, I guess, for people that haven't seen the video, your stance on this, and I want to talk about it because I think it's such a great concept that I don't think anybody's really kind of brought out to light,
Oh
especially
wow.
on social media. And it's a hot topic, but for a great reason. So tell us a little bit about that.
So the phrase girl boss, I will say there's was definitely a time in my life, probably in my early 20s, where I would probably refer to other women like, oh, she's such a girl boss. Like, because it was cool. And then it got to a point where I was like, ew, why am I calling like 40 something or younger, right? 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever year old women who have worked their asses off and been successful or just as or more successful as a man. Why does he get to be a boss and she get to be a girl boss? Like,
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. So I would randomly over the last few years like tweet about it, mention it, and I get a lot of people like, oh my God, I hate it too. I hate working mom as a phrase because no one says working dad. Uh,
Right.
a lot of people would be like, no, I totally agree. They'll send me things that say girl boss, like photos of it to be like, oh my God, how much do you hate this? Like things like that. But on International Women's Day, I was like, screw it. I'm making a video. This is going to be, it's either going to go awesome or terrible. And I'd say 95% of it were women saying, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying this. I mean, when I saw how many times it was shared, because you can see that on Instagram, I was like, oh my God, who are these people sending it to? Like other women? It was really, really cool to see that. But I will say, I know there were a lot of men that were like, but so what? If I want to be called a girl boss, I'm like, go ahead. By all means, like, if that's how you identify, right? If that's what helps motivate you and helps you feel powerful, I'm not telling you not to identify as that. I'm just saying we don't need to put female qualifiers before everything. So say girl, like unless I'm gonna start calling you, Ryan, a boy boss.
Right.
I can't even say it. Boy boss.
It also makes us sound like we have a New York accent all of a sudden. It's a boy boss. Like it's like, wait a minute, what?
My Jersey came out for a second. But I don't like. It's so frustrating, and it kind of diminishes all of the work a woman, a female, puts into her career or whatever it is, and just calling her a girl boss. No, she's a boss. She is successful. She has worked her ass off. So don't put that qualifier before that word. And that was essentially my rant.
Because I mean, it almost essentially kind of establishes this concept of like, she's a boss, she's an incredible leader, and she's a woman. Like, it's like, wait a minute, what? Like, why is that necessary to put in the sentence?
Thank you. And it's also like, in some cases, it's like, oh, they're a female athlete. No, they're an athlete. Yeah, when you're saying female athletes have to deal with X, Y, Z compared to male athletes, but if an athlete doesn't necessarily identify herself as, oh, I'm a female athlete, because basketball players in the NBA don't say, I'm a male athlete. No, I'm an athlete. I'm a basketball player. I'm not a female basketball player. And people put that qualifier for some reason. I don't know when or why it started, but it needs to stop.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this eventually being a book written by you. I'm just saying, like, I'm just envisioning that being a thing down the road, because as soon as I saw it, that was my whole thing. I was like, this is an epic thesis that I feel like she could actually like create a book that's like, squash the girl boss, like that kind of thing. That's just like,
ideas that I've been working on. So hopefully that'll happen at some point.
Oh, good.
But there's a print, or it comes as a card or whatever you want. One of our local stores here, Alaire, has it, and it says, I'm not a boss bitch, I'm a boss bitch.
That's fantastic, with a comma. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's like, that is such a great kind of concept, because truly, like, we want to celebrate women, yes. But we also don't want to put them into a box by being like, hey, check out this incredible individual who's a woman. It's more so of like, hey, let's celebrate incredible women. Boom. Like,
boom, done.
End of sentence. That kind of thing. Now, finally, I want to talk about "you look great." This, phrase that you guys have used, obviously, the last couple of years, that has now kind of evolved into, first of all, its own brand. That's kind of like a sub brand of your personal brand. And also has developed into cool merch, which if people are watching the video podcast, what up? Modeling the shirt. Thanks. So that's like one thing I want to talk about too before we wrap up the podcast is explain "you look great" and tell us a little bit about just kind of how it developed into merch. And then also, for some shameless plugging, let them know where they can find said merch.
So it was something we would say on the radio. We just wanted our own phrase. Like Elvis Duran in the morning show has "Hello Lady."
Yeah.
Howard Stern had like Baba Booey, two completely different things, but we were like, what is our show gonna have? And we tried, like, we were making it a joke on the air, like, what do we want it to be? And then one day we literally bumped into a stranger. We were talking to him, and as he rode away on his bicycle, he was like, hey, you guys look great. And Anthony was like, is that it? And I'm like, what? And he's like, is that what we're gonna say on the air? And I was like, okay, let's try it. And then at first I was like, well, it's weird. We're telling people to tell us we look great. So we started doing callers. They'd call in, and as they're about to hang up, we'd be like, you look great. And they were like, what? You look great. And it started happening. So instead of saying goodbye, people would, as they were ending their call, they'd be like, you look great. And then our whole studio would yell it back. And the irony was we couldn't see them. They couldn't see us. So it wasn't really actually what you looked like, but it was just a fun phrase to yell to someone. They felt great, whatever. So then
Mhm.
we started doing like you look great workout challenges. And that's just what we called it. But it was like 4 weeks of a workout challenge. We were a part of it. It was all about accountability. Other people did it with us and so on. Fast forward to finally launching our own business, we had been getting asked forever. People have been like, "Can you make a You Look Great t-shirt? Can you make a You Look Great t-shirt?" And at that point, we had just been giving out some stickers. And we were like, "All right, now's the time to do it." And we started working with a warehouse on Long Island in New York who had worked with other podcasts that we know. And we're like, "We want to do this insane merch drop where we just have like everything." And he was like, "Okay." And we did it. We were shocked. We at this there's probably close to 2,500 orders, which means well over that many You Look Great items. And we are just like had just started this less than a year ago. Um, and yeah, we sold t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, backpacks, like all kinds of things that say you look great. And the response has been amazing because people are like, when I wear my shirt, people will be like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." And they're like, "I forgot why someone's thanking me." And they look down like, "Oh, my shirt is spreading positivity."
Yeah.
Even me, I was wearing a shirt in a workout class and the instructor was like, "That is such a great shirt to wear in here." And I was like, "Thanks, it's my company." And I'm like such a nerd. But it's just become this super positive phrase, super positive clothing line. And for us, it's also a business, and we want that to grow even more to other things, eventually work with charities and give back to them. And there's so much to do with it. There's literally no time to do half the things that we want to do. Yeah, it's been amazing to see people like even you. Every time you pop up on my feed and you're wearing the shirt, I'm like, "Oh my God, it's our shirt." And I like geek out over it. And it's really, really cool to see the support it's been getting.
Yeah, it's epic, and it's, it's spreading like wildfire. Like seeing some of the individuals just all over like social media that have got the shirts on or the hats on, or
Yeah.
any of that merch, that it's becoming that phrase. And I think even, probably on a deeper level, you guys weren't even thinking about like the concept of, again, like you can't see the person on the other side of the radio station that's listening in their car or whatever, but it's that concept of like, well, hey, if they're driving around and we're telling them they look great no matter what,
They're
that's
gonna
such
feel
a cool motivational thing, that they're like, "Oh, they think I look great." And I thought I looked terrible today, but that turned it all around.
a woman just tagged us in a video right before you and I jumped on to record this. And it was her celebrating 1 year cancer free. And in the video, she's wearing her You Look Great beanie. And I'm like,
Wow.
what is happening? Like,
Yeah.
this is like, oh my God, this woman is celebrating this amazing thing in her life and she's wearing our stuff.
Mhm.
What? So it has been kind of crazy for us, but in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. Carla Marie, thank you so much for jumping on. This has been so cool, like just to not only hear your story, but to kind of pinpoint some of these big moments, especially in recent years. And it truly, I feel like, it's already inspiring so many others to not only, get into heavier content creation or just, into live streaming, but also to just realize that there's always kind of that silver lining, or there's always that next thing the
Yep.
next good thing that you can do, after something that may not have been great that has taken place. So, props to you and Anthony for what you guys have been doing, over the last, couple of years, and really just, following that roller coaster ride of just all of the stuff that's been going on.
Well, thank you. And thank you for letting me be here to explain this, to go off on a rant. You are very easy to talk to. You are very good at your job. So thank you very, very much. And especially for the girl boss rant. This is the first time I've been interviewed about it. So that's
And
exciting.
probably
Uh,
not the last, especially if you
oh,
write a book.
well, yes, if I write the book, then I'll be on my tour and I'll get to talk about the first time I was interviewed about it. And it would
There
be
we
you.
go. Exactly.
Also, you mentioned shameless plug, youlookgreat.co to get your You Look Great gear.
Perfect.
Be a terrible business owner if I didn't do that.
I was waiting for it. Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much, Carla Marie, and you can now release your cats from the other room.
Oh my God, I got cat hair in my eyeball this whole time. That's what I've been picking at. So they're with me, even though they're not actually with me.
Man, I just love getting to hear Carla Marie's story. Taking a situation like a format flip, a brand change, or ultimately losing a job during the COVID-19 pandemic, but taking that situation, revitalizing and rejuvenating not only your personal brand, but the brand of you and your partner, making it even cooler, even bigger, revolutionizing it, putting it on multiple platforms online, and then inspiring others to do exactly the same. not only to help themselves, help others, but help the small business community all at the same exact time. Her and Anthony's brands, whether it's their Twitch show, their morning show podcast, or their You Look Great brand, is truly an inspiration to others, not only just in the media and small business community, but really just all over the nation in general, to do something that you are dreaming of and not letting a situation like losing your job or something shifting in your life or in your career, not letting that stop you from seeing how you can do the best good, best right thing and using that to inspire others. So cool, such a great story. Glad you could watch and listen and hear the story, and we're so excited to see what's to come right here on the Ryan Chats With podcast. As for Carla Marie and Anthony, you can check out their Twitch show and their morning show podcast. We're gonna drop the links right there in the description box in the whether you're watching on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're watching or listening to. Of course, with the You Look Great merch, you can check that out over at youlookgreat.co. In the meantime, God bless, peace out, Girl Scouts.